The moment the slashed tires came into view, Sarah knew this wasn't just some random act. It was targeted. Her 10-year-old son, Liam, stood beside her with wide eyes, clutching his backpack like a shield. The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street, but the message etched into the side of her car screamed loud and clear, "Freak family." Sarah felt the old instincts stir deep in her bones, the ones she hadn't needed in years, since her time in the Marines. They thought she was just a tired single mom. They didn't know who they were messing with. Just 3 months earlier, Sarah had moved to the small town of Fairpoint with Liam to escape the noise, the grief, and the relentless pressure of city life after her husband's death. She'd wanted a quiet place to heal, to rebuild. But small towns had their own kind of cruelty, and Liam's quiet nature and love for art made him an easy target at his new school. He didn't like sports, didn't talk much, and didn't fight back. And for some kids, that was enough. It started with teasing, name-calling, pencils stolen from his desk, cruel notes in his locker. Sarah tried to stay calm, to talk to the teachers, but nothing changed. The principal gave her tired smiles and empty promises. "We're working on it," he'd say, then send Liam back into the same hostile classrooms. Then came the bruises. "Liam, what happened?" she asked one night after seeing the blue mark on his ribs as he changed for bed. He looked down. "I fell in gym," he mumbled. But Sarah had seen that look before. It was the same one Marines wore when they didn't want to talk about the battlefield. Liam was being hunted, and now, it had reached their doorstep. Sarah had spent 12 years in the Marine Corps. She'd led missions in hostile territory, defused bombs, and seen things she never spoke about. But nothing cut her deeper than seeing her child afraid to go to school. The night after the tire slashing, Sarah sat at the kitchen table and made a plan. She wasn't going to storm into the school or threaten anyone, yet. First, she was going to observe, collect evidence, and understand who exactly was behind the bullying. She wanted to fight back, but the way she'd been trained, with precision, patience, and purpose. She installed a discreet camera on their porch, carried a small recording device during school meetings, and even walked Liam to school pretending to be just another tired parent. But she watched everything. The bullies, 3 boys, all from well-off families, followed Liam daily, whispering threats, pushing him in the hallways, mocking his clothes and his quiet nature. And worse, the teachers often looked the other way. Sarah wasn't angry just at the boys. She was furious at the adults who were supposed to protect her son. The ones who failed him over and over again. One day, she quietly visited the homes of each of the boys, parking nearby and observing. She took note of their routines, the way their parents treated them, the cars they drove, the schools they bragged about. She wasn't stalking them, she was preparing a case, the way she'd been trained to assess targets during recon. Then, one afternoon, she picked Liam up early and walked him to the nearby community center, where she had quietly arranged a self-defense program. She began teaching him the basics, not to fight, but to hold his ground. Confidence was the first weapon. Days turned into weeks, and Liam began to change. He stood a little straighter. His voice got stronger. He stopped flinching when someone raised their hand near him. And when one of the bullies shoved him in the hallway again, Liam didn't throw a punch, but he didn't fall either. He looked the boy in the eye and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're not scary. You're just loud." That moment was caught on a student's phone. It went viral in the school, and for the first time, the bullies looked unsure. But Sarah was just getting started. She gathered the videos, audio clips, and witness statements. She created a detailed report, complete with timestamps, names, and a letter addressed not just to the principal, but to the school board, the superintendent, and the local media. She scheduled a meeting with the school district and walked in wearing the uniform she hadn't worn in years, her Marine dress blues. The room went quiet as she stepped in. She stood before the board and laid out every piece of evidence. Every ignored complaint. Every failure to protect her child. Her voice was calm, unwavering. Then she finished with one line. "You allowed my son to be hunted. You let children believe this behavior was acceptable. But I didn't spend 12 years defending this country just to come home and let my son be bullied in silence." The backlash was immediate. The school launched an investigation. The principal was placed on leave. 2 of the bullies' families issued public apologies. The third tried to threaten legal action, until Sarah released footage of their son mocking a disabled student in the hallway. But Sarah didn't want revenge. She wanted change. Within a month, the school adopted a new anti-bullying policy, brought in professional counselors, and began a peer mentorship program. And Liam, now a quiet hero in his own right, was asked to help lead it. He stood at the first school-wide assembly, looking out at the faces that once ignored him. And with a proud smile, he told his story. Not of being a victim, but of finding his strength. Sarah watched from the back of the room, tears in her eyes. Not because her plan worked, but because her son now stood tall, no longer a target, but a leader. They had tried to break their family. They thought she was just a single mom. But they forgot one thing. She was a Marine. And Marines don't back down. Not in war. Not at home. Not ever.